Welcome back everyone to this Let's Play of Kerbal Space Program 1.0.5. Now we left Val and Jeb after they had left the sphere of influence of Minmus to complete a contract to return some ore back to orbit of Kerbin. Now they have a very eccentric orbit of Kerbin, but orbit of Kerbin they have, contract complete, and now they are stuck in orbit. They have a fair amount of fuel, but probably not enough fuel to circularize and bring themselves into a nice equatorial orbit. So I said I had a plan, and I do. So let's go into the VAB and find out what that plan is. So now that we've completed the contract, the ore is just so much dead weight. So I thought in order to make better use of that dead weight, let's convert it into something. So we're going to use the Convert-o-Tron 125, which will allow us to convert ore using electric charge and convert it either into monopropellant, oxidizer, liquid fuel and oxidizer, which is going to be our preferred choice, or just liquid fuel. But like I say, we're going to use the liquid fuel and oxidizer. So there's our little converter. So we're going to work from the middle of our little vessel outwards. So the next thing we're going to need is some batteries. So let's pick up a couple of batteries and just put those batteries one on each end. We're going to need to be able to dock it. So let's get some RCS fuel and drop that there on the bottom. And of course, poor old Jeb and Val, their snacks will be rather stale by now. So let's get ourselves a life support tank to bring them up some fresh snacks. So let's pop that on the top. So that's kind of the core of our vessel. But there's one thing missing. And that one thing is going to be a probe core, because we actually need to be able to control this little vessel in order to dock it, hence the RCS fuel. Now, because we don't have any of the round probe cores, I'm going to create a round probe core using this service bay. So this service bay is going to contain all of our gubbins that we're going to use for our probe core. So let's go and find ourselves a probe core. It doesn't particularly matter which one. So we'll pick this one and drop that in there at the top. We'll also get our scriptable control system, and let's see, can we get that in there? There we go. I think that's clipped in. Move that around. Yeah, definitely clipped in. We're going to have to remember to increase the KOS disk space for our rather excessive scripts. We're also going to cram in our Kerbal engineering system, and so we'll squeeze that in there like so. So let's just drop that down just a little bit. There we go. So that's our sort of round probe core, and that works pretty well. So let's just close that up. And finally, to complete the body of our probe core, we're going to require some Convert-o-Tron docking ports. So let's go for the standard Convert-o-Tron docking port, and we'll Alt key and snap that one to the top. No, that's the junior one. Let's get the real biggie. So let's just rotate that and then Alt click that to the bottom. So that's our sort of missile-shaped probe that we're going to be attaching to the top of Val and Jeb's craft. But we do need to be able to dock it, so we'll need to put some RCS ports on, but we also need to be able to recharge our batteries. So let's do that first. So let's go and get some panels, and I think we'll use the Gigantor solar panels, but we're not going to use 3. And there's a very good reason why we're not going to use 3, and I'll show you that after we've placed 2 panels. So we place one there, we'll place one here, because I want the third panel to be one of these thermal control systems. We try the medium one. Let's have a look. Let's put a medium one here on the side like so. There we go. Because Our poor old converter there is going to be generating rather a lot of heat. In order to keep it efficient, we'll need to keep that heat down. So these 3 panels here might be a little bit excessive in size for the vehicle we have, so maybe we won't use the medium one. Let's try the oh, that's the medium one again. Let's try the small one. Is that going to be too small? Let's have an extend of that one. That's probably going to be a little bit too small, so we will go with the medium one. So let's pick, there we go, there's the medium one. So let's plant that there on the side. So it's roughly balanced. Let's close that up and close that up as well. So that's relatively well balanced. So we should be okay now to try balancing this vehicle using the RCS build aid. So we'll bring that up now and go and get some of our thruster blocks. They're under command and control. We use the standard RCS thruster block here, and we'll place 4 of those around the top and 4 of them around the bottom. Let's just plant 4 there for the moment and 4 here. And using the RCS build aid, we're just going to raise and lower these control blocks until we can minimize the turning torque, which you can see represented by the red arrow, and also here the torque on the panel up here on the right. So let's grab hold of our top set and just raise those up a little. So we're getting down to 0.054033. Gone a little bit too far. So somewhere about here. There we go. Now, obviously, when we use up a little bit of this fuel, we've got 250 units of fuel. Let's say we use half of it in order to dock. We've still got quite a hefty torque now because all of the weight drain is here down at the bottom. But we should be okay. I think we should be okay. We'll probably use much less than that by the time we actually arrive at docking with our craft. So let's leave that fully fueled and fully balanced as fully fueled. So this is our Convert-o-Tron. So let's put that in here. Convert-o-Tron. This is our Convert-o-Tron unit. So let's save that. And now we need to attach ourselves a launch stage on here. So let's go and get one I prepared earlier. Well, as you can see, we've got a fairly standard orange tank based launcher. The center column in here is a Rockomax Jumbo 64 fuel tank, bottomed off with a Skipper liquid fuel engine. We have 2 orange tanks on either side, configured, as you can see here, with a asparagus staged fuel pipe leading into the central tank. And we have a couple of Thumper solid fuel boosters here on the side, just to give us a little bit more of a thump to get us off the launch pad. Now, of course, we're playing with stage recovery. So I have my MK16XL parachutes here on the top of our disposable tanks, hopefully to recover a little bit more of our funds. So that will give us a thruster weight ratio of 1.61 thruster weight ratio off of the pad, and we have a grand total of 5,586 delta V in atmosphere. So we should have plenty of delta V for us to rendezvous with Val and Jeb. So let's get this thing into orbit. First things we need to do is just complete the fairings. So let's slap on a set of fairings. These are the egg-shaped fairings, and then just make sure those egg-shaped fairings are in the right stage. Let's just break out a stage there. So let's put that up towards the top. So we have the 3 Skipper engines and the boosters. We then have the booster separation, the liquid tank separation. Yeah, that's the liquid tank separation there. and finally we have the fairing separation. This separator in here is the one we'll use to drop off the Convert-o-Tron when we go to the final docking phase. So let's just resave this and get on out to the launch pad. Well, we're here in map mode because there's a couple of things we need to do. Now, there's the Convert-o-Tron ready on the launch pads. You can see the launch site just here. But I've already selected the ore transporter up here in the top left of Kerbin to show you where the target vessel is for Val and Jeb. And you'll notice that one of the features of their orbit is that, although it's very eccentric, it's also at an inclination to Kerbin. And that is something we're going to have to cater for when we launch. Now, the way to work out exactly what that inclination is to use another feature of Kerbal Engineer, which is the rendezvous tools. Now, I've already selected the ore transport craft as the target. I've selected as an available parameter the distance, which is a fairly meaningless 47,000 kilometers. We have a measure of the relative velocity, which at the moment is only 188 meters per second. But this is the important piece of information from this display. It gives us the relative inclination is 29.3 degrees, so about 30 degrees, which is about what you would have probably guessed this line would be. Now, to save a bit of fuel, we're going to launch into that inclination, and the best way to do that is to wait for Kerbin to rotate until the launch site is underneath the periapsis here. So let's just line that back up again and just use a little bit of the magic of time warp to bring the planet around. So let's go times 10, times 50, and here we go, times 100. So you can just see the Convert-o-Tron here at the launch site. This mass of icons here is Minmus, and then you can just see in the background there the ore transporter. So let's bring the launch site just underneath that periapsis there. So we're about halfway. Just popping out there, getting a little bit closer. And there we go. So we're about underneath the flight path now. So we're going to have to launch into that inclination. So let's just pop back out to the launch pad. We'll bring up our KOS window. So let's just drop away that control panel there. Let's initialize our scripts. There we go. And then run our ascend script. So it's ascend 8. It's going to be 100,000 kilometers, 100,000 meters and 30 degrees. So let's run this script, get ourselves off the pad and up into that initial orbit. Now you can see that the craft has already rotated to try and match that 30-degree inclination, because it's going to slide over in this direction. Let's just get rid of our Kerbal Engineer window for the moment. Let's just concentrate on the launch. Now we've got just about 2 thrust-to-weight ratio, which is the target thrust-to-weight ratio that we've been tuning our various craft towards. So we're going to start throttling back. You can just see the figure here starting to throttle back, and you can see the control here just starting to throttle the skipper engines back to try its best to maintain that thrust-to-weight ratio of about 2. But it is chasing that thrust-to-weight ratio because, of course, we're burning fuel. There go our solid fuel boosters. So our there goes one of them into pieces. So we won't be recovering much of that. But at least we might recover one of them. But solid fuel boosters, they're relatively cheap, so we wouldn't have recovered very much cash from them anyway. But as I was saying, the poor old PID controller is having to chase the thrust-to-weight ratio, because as we burn fuel, the weight is going down, so the thrust-to-weight ratio is constantly going up, and you can see that here in this second figure here on the right. So we're at 16,000 kilometers, about halfway through our second stage worth of liquid fuel, so that's in these outer boosters here. So that's doing we're doing pretty well. Throttle still coming back is about 3/4, 75%. Still maintaining us at around about a target of 2. So we maybe got 15-20% of our fuel left at about 30 kilometers. So throttling right back now, so we're at 2/3. But as we reach our final angle of attack, I won't call it inclination, final angle of attack, we go to full throttle in order to complete our orbit. So our apoapsis now is well above the atmosphere. There we go, through 85 kilometers there. We lose our 2 outer orange tanks. We now have a full inner orange tank. Hopefully they will stay in one piece to be recovered. Excellent. And our apoapsis, our target apoapsis, has been reached. So it's time to begin our circularization. So let's do that. And whilst that's circularizing, let's go out into map mode. And you can see it's not perfect, but we didn't do too bad. We didn't do too bad. Let's just reselect Val and Jeb as our target. So you can see we didn't do too bad, so there's not going to be much of an adjustment to do. So let's run our node script in order to execute our circularization node. And you can also see on the nav ball how we are not on the 90-degree mark, which you might have imagined we would be. So let's just pop ourselves onto our blue node. Whoops. You can see us just struggling a little to balance and hang on to our blue node because this is quite a heavy and bulky craft. We also should get rid of our fairing, so let's do that now. There we go. And whilst that fairing set disappears into the distance, let's get our panels extended. Don't really need to extend our radiator, but we perhaps keep our vehicle a little bit better balanced if we do. So let's extend all of those panels. There we go. Now one thing I am going to do is I'm going to reduce the gimbal on this, and we're going to leave it as locked, as I did this in the VAB off screen, because I do find some of these very floppy craft, if they've got a very soft joint such as this one here that joins this control section to the main engine, the gimbaling can thrash around and can lead to a very poor circularization experience. But we will leave the reaction wheels, this very large reaction wheel here, to do the majority of our control, and that way we leave this gimbaling off, so we don't get that thrashing around that you can get sometimes. So we're beginning our circularization maneuver. Let's just pop out into map mode and see how we're doing. So we're fairly close. If we get a little bit closer in, you can see we do have a little bit of an adjustment to make. So our apoapsis is just a little bit ahead of the target periapsis we launched under, and that's not surprising because we were a little bit late in launching, so that pushed us off a little bit to the east. So we should have launched maybe a little bit earlier, but that's not so bad. Correcting for that tiny difference in inclination will be a relatively small amount of delta V to expend. So we've got about, there we go, 330 delta V still to run out. Just see our circularization maneuver completing. Let's just bring Kerbin into the center there. Go up above the North Pole. And there we go, there's our periapsis just popping out there. So that's grand. Now, it doesn't really matter what our total altitude was. We happen to know that the incoming vehicle is a periapsis of 94, so our periapsis of about 96 should be absolutely perfect. And see, we've got a crossover point here where we have a potential rendezvous. Unfortunately, as we zoom out, you can see the next time we're at that rendezvous point, Val and Jeb will still be way over there. But we do have some things that we need to do. So the first thing we're going to do is just sort out our relative inclination. So let's put ourselves on the AN here, the ascending node, and just add a maneuver, and that will bring up the precise node window. We don't need the KOS node for the moment. Now we can put ourselves exactly on the ascending node just by clicking the ascending node button there. There we go. And now we need to adjust our trajectory. We need to descend in order to reduce our ascending node. So at the moment our ascending node is 3.2 degrees of relative inclination. So let's just pull down until we see the AN and the DN swap over. Starting to get a bit twitchy. You can see the projected trajectory there as the orange line, so you can see, here we go, there we are. So an ascending and descending node of 0 is about as close as we're ever going to get. So that's a nice change of inclination there. You can also see we now have these two potential points at which our two orbits cross. So these will be our two potential rendezvous points. So let's just get up our KOS window again and execute that node. So let's pop up our run node command using the up arrow key. Now we can see it's going to be estimated burn duration of 5.8 seconds. So that's actually quite long. You can see even a relatively small change of inclination still takes up quite a bit of delta V. 125.7 meters per second is still a hefty amount. But nevertheless, let's crack on. It's something we need to do. So let's just move ourselves through to here. So let's warp to here. So that's going to bring us around to this point here. You can just see, there we are. There's the Convert-o-Tron coming around on its orbit. Now we're going at a relatively slow multiple of time because we're still in quite a low orbit. So time warp is complete, and time warping in 2.5 minutes. So we've got to get ourselves turned around and pre-aligned to our maneuver node. So there we go. There's a little blue marker. So just gently bring it around. There we go. So we're pre-aligned, and we're going to lock onto alignment at 1 minute and 3 seconds. That's in a minute's time. So let's just use the magic of time warp to bring this around to about 1 minute and 3 seconds. So there we go, 1 minute 30, 1 minute 10. So let's just come out of time warp. 1 minute 5. And there we go. So that's locked ourselves on to our maneuver node. And the actual maneuver itself will be fired on the T-3. So again, we can use time warp just to speed our way around to the, let's say, 10 seconds. So there goes 25, 15, and there we go. So that's 10 seconds. There we go, burning off our maneuver, just bringing ourselves around to a better align with the target inclination. And there we go, so that's done. And there we go. Descending node and obviously the ascending node are now 0, 0. And we can confirm that using Kerbal Engineer, using the rendezvous window. So there we go, our relative inclination is 0.02721. So that's absolutely ideal. So all we need to do now is wait for Jeb and Val to arrive. And we're going to do that in the next episode. So I'd like to thank you for watching, and I hope to see you again soon. Take care. Bye-bye.